So here are our note page for today. There are 10 problems and I'll work through each of them, and I may go fast, but you can always pause the video to write down the steps if I'm writing too fast. So when we're solving equations, we're going to be solving up to 5-step equations, and so we're going to ask ourselves these 5 questions off here to the side, and we're going to solve them in order to get our variable by itself. It helps to go in a specific order so that we don't make silly mistakes. So our first equation, 9x plus 1 minus 7x minus 5 equals negative 20. So I'm going to start by drawing a line down my equal sign just to separate my two sides. And I'm going to ask myself these questions over to the side. So I see that I don't have any grouping symbols, so I'm not going to have to use the distributive property, so we're already good on number 1. Number 2, do we have like terms on the same side of the equal sign? Yes, we do. So we have 9x and negative 7x. So I like to put a box around my terms that can be combined. So I see a term, these ones can be combined. So I put a circle around my constant numbers and a box around my variables, and I'll probably do that throughout the video. So I can see here that I can combine 9x minus 7x. I'm going to combine without changing any signs. So 9x minus 7x gives me 2x. And then I have 1 minus 5 gives me a negative 4. And that equals negative 20 on the right side. So we've combined our like terms. And then we ask ourselves, do we have variables on both sides? No, we don't. So we're just going to go down to the next problem there. And our question is, does the equation contain constant numbers on both sides of the equal sign? And the answer to that is yes. We have a negative 20 and a negative 4. So what we're going to do is move the constant number that's on the same side as the variable and move it with inverse operations. So I'm going to move plus 4 to both sides, and then I'm left with 2x equals negative 20 plus 4, which is a negative 16. And so that takes care of our constant numbers. And then our last question is there a coefficient other than 1 with the variable? And the answer to that is yes. And so we're going to divide both sides by 2, and that leaves x by itself, and we get negative 16 divided by 2, which is negative 8. And that is our answer. Okay, so number 2. So we have 91 equals negative 7, parentheses 3a minus 1. So our first question, does the equation contain grouping symbols? Yes, it does. We have them right here. We have, let me go smaller. We have negative 3 and my a minus 1 in grouping symbols. So what we're going to do is use the distributive property. So what we're distributing, or if you're in my class, we have, I always say, what is Oprah giving away? So what Oprah is giving away is, I'll highlight it maybe in, go red. So Oprah's giving this away right here. So we're going to distribute negative 7 times 3a and negative 7 times negative 1. So that will look like negative 7 times 3a is negative 21a. Negative 7 times a negative 1 we get as a plus 7. And then on the left side, we just have that 91 that needs to come down from the first equation. So we finished our grouping symbols. Now our question 2, does the equation contain like terms on the same side of the equal sign? So over here on the left, we just have a 91, and on the right, we have a variable and a constant. So those can't be combined, so we're just going to go to number 3. Does the equation contain variables on both sides? Well, no, we only have variables on the right side, so let's go down to number 4. Number 4, does the equation contain constant numbers on both sides of the equal sign? Yes, we have a constant number. We have 7 and we have 91. So we're going to move the constant that's on the same side as the variable by inverse operation. So since we have a positive 7, we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. This now becomes 0, and now we have 91 minus 7, which is 84. and then we have negative 21a left on the right. So we did our constants on both sides. And our last question, is there a coefficient other than 1 with the variable? And our coefficient is negative 21, so we're going to have to divide both sides by negative 21. Negative 21 divided by negative 21 is just 1, so we're left with a on the right. And then 84 divided by negative 21 is a negative 4. So that would be our answer there. So we divided properly. Okay, so number 3. So again, I'm reading these questions in order over here on the right, in order. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the steps in solving. So our first question is, does the equation contain grouping symbols? And we do have our grouping symbols. We have our parentheses right here. And what's being distributed is this 5 here and this negative 5. So we're going to go ahead and perform that. So negative 5 times negative 3, so we get negative 15m. And then negative 5 times a positive 10 is a minus or negative 50. And then we have to bring down what's ever left. So we have 126 on the right side. And then we still have this 4m that we can't forget about on the left. So we did our grouping symbols. Now, does the equation contain like terms on the same side of the equal sign? So our like terms, we have a 4m and a negative 15m, which we can combine. And then we have a negative 50 that doesn't have any other friends. So when we combine these, 4m minus 15m is a negative 11m minus 50 equals 126. So then we combined our like terms. So our next question, does the equation have variables on both sides? And we only have variables on the left, so we're going to go down to question 4. Does the equation contain constant numbers on both sides of the equal sign? Yes, we have a negative 50 and a 126. So what we're going to do is move the constant number that's on the same side as the variable and move it by inverse operation. So we're going to add 50. So this becomes 0 on the left, and we're left with negative 11m equals 126 plus 50, which is 176. And then our last question is there a coefficient other than 1 with the variable? We have a coefficient of negative 11, so we're going to divide both sides by that negative 11, and we're left with m on the left, and then 176 divided by 11 here. And this is where you may not know your 11s. So I'm going to just do some long division right here. So so let's just drop this sign until the end. So I'm going to take this sign, and so I don't forget about it, I know it needs to be in my answer. So 11 into 17 is 1 time. 1 times 11 is 11. 17 minus 11 is 6, and then I'll bring down my other 6. And then 11 goes into 66 6 times. And so my answer is going to be, I'm going to write it right here. Let me maybe zoom in a little bit. Negative 16. So we don't want to forget that negative there that we started from the beginning. So we divided. All right. Number 4. So on this one, we have our question, does the equation contain grouping symbols? So our answer is yes. So we have these grouping symbols. We actually have 2 sets of grouping symbols. So that means we're going to have 2 different things that are being distributed. So we have the things that I'm highlighting in green are what is being distributed. So we have negative 3 to k and negative 3 to negative 8. So negative 3 times k is negative 3k. And then negative 3 times negative 8 is a plus 24. So then we also have this. So if you want to think of this as a negative 1, you can do that, or just think of it as a negative, because it is essentially a negative 1. So negative 1 times k would give us a negative k, and a negative 1 times negative 5 gives us a negative 5. So on the right side, we still have that lonely 23. So we combined our grouping symbols. So our next question is, does the equation contain like terms on the same side of the equal sign? So again, I'm boxing variables, circling constants, box variables, circle constants. And then this allows me to see that, okay, I can combine these two and I can combine these two. So let's do that really quickly. Negative 3k minus k, or if I wanted to write a 1 there, I could. That leaves us with a negative 4k. And then 24 minus 5 gives us a plus 19, and that equals 23. And then from there, so we combined our like terms. Our question is, does the equation contain variables on both sides? Well, there's only variables on the left, so let's go down to question 4. Does the equation contain constant numbers? I forgot to number these at the beginning, 3, 4. Question 4, does the equation contain constant numbers? Yes, it does. We have a 19 and we have a 23. So with our 19, we're going to subtract 19 from both sides, and then that becomes 0, and we're left with negative 4k equals negative, sorry, not a negative 4. It's actually going to be 23 minus 19, which is 4. And then negative 4, divide both sides by 4. So that allows us to move our constant and to divide by our coefficient. We're left with k equals negative 1. All right, moving down. Okay, so we have our 5 questions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our first question is about grouping symbols. So we know we have our grouping symbols right here, and we need to know what we're distributing. So we're going to be distributing this negative 6. So let's start there. So negative 6 goes to both of these. So now we have negative 12x, and then negative 6 times 5 is minus 30. And then we got to bring these guys down. So 10x, and then on the left side we have 20. So we have 10x minus 12x minus 30. So we did our grouping symbols, we distributed, and then we have to ask about like terms, which we do. So we have 10x minus 12x. So we can combine those two, and then the 30 just is going to stay the same. So 10x minus 12x is negative 2x minus 30, and that equals 20. So then we don't have variables on both sides, so we're going to go down to 4, where we have these constant numbers. So we have negative 30 and 20. So we're going to move the one with the variable on the same side as the variable to get the variable by itself. So we have negative 2x equals 50. And then we are going to divide both sides by negative 2. And that leaves us with x equals negative 25. So our coefficient, I kind of skipped over those, but there you go. All right, number 6. So here's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 possible steps, and sometimes we skip some. So our first question being about grouping symbols, so that's these parentheses right here, and we're going to be distributing this 8 into my parentheses. So we have 8 times 2w and 8 times negative 1. So when we distribute there, we're going to have 16w minus 8, and then I'm going to carry these guys down, minus 4w, and then equals negative 116. So now we grouped our symbols, and now we're going to combine our like terms. So we have 16w and negative 4w. So I can combine those. 16w minus 4w is 12w. And then the 8 didn't have any friends, so we just bring him down there, right there. And that equals negative 116. All right, so we don't have variables on both sides, but we do have our constant numbers here. So we're going to add 8 because that's on the same side as the variable, because we want to get the w by itself. So that becomes 0 on the left. Now we're left with 12w equals negative 116 plus 8 is going to be a negative 108. And then we're going to divide both sides by 12. And then we're left with w equals negative 9. So I've just kind of been going through those kind of quickly. Number 7. So we have, I keep forgetting to draw my line at the beginning. So we have our grouping symbols for question 1 right here. And we're going to be distributing this negative 1, or just the negative, right? However you look at it. So when we distribute this negative 1 here, or the negative, we'll be left with negative 2h, and then a negative times a negative is a plus 1. And that equals 118. And then we also have this 11h over here. So now we can combine our like terms. So we have 11h minus 2h, which we can combine, and that's going to be 9h plus 1 equals 118. Oh, not 180. 118. And then from there, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides, and we're left with 9h equals 117. All right, so then we're going to take our coefficient, which is 9, and divide both sides into it. And so this is where I would get my long division out. So 9 goes into 11 one time. 1 times 9 is 9. Then we're going to bring down 2, and then divide our 7 down. 9 goes into 27 3 times. So we're left with h equaling 13. All right. So we did our 5. So the only step we didn't need to do was number 3. Okay, so now we have some fractions. We have some fractions here. So we could turn them to decimals, but I think in this case it's going to be just as easy to just keep it as a fraction. So we're going to be distributing, because we have here, and what we're distributing is going to be this 1/2, okay? So we're going to do 1/2 times 10x and 1/2 times negative 2. So when we multiply by a half, we're actually just dividing by 2. Or you could look at it, if I wanted to, this might not miss, how I kind of look at it is I'm going to draw this over here. 1/2, and if I were to turn this into a fraction, minus 2 over 1 here. So I would just be able to multiply across. So 1 times 10 would be 10, 2 times 1 would be 2, and 10 divided by 2 would give me 5x. And then 1 times negative 2 is negative 2 divided by 2 times 1 is 2, gives me a negative 1. Hopefully that wasn't more confusing than it needs to be. So then with the rest, we're going to just bring down the 3x and equals negative 25. So then we're going to combine our like terms. So 5x and 3x, we get 8x minus 1 equals negative 25. Then we're going to add 1 to both sides. Then we have 8x equals negative 25 plus 1, which is negative 24. Divide both sides by 8. And then we're left with x equals a negative 3. So again, this is the steps we're going by. And the only step we did not need to use was, on this one, was the variables on both sides. But all of the other ones we used. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. So we have another set of fractions. So first, our grouping symbol is here. And our distribution that's happening is going to be this negative 5/2 that I'm distributing. Yes, you could turn it to a decimal, but I think it might just be just as easy. So I'm going to just kind of draw. I'm going to do my fraction multiplication over here. So we have when we multiply fractions, right, so we're just taking -5/2, we just need to think about multiplying. If I turned 8 into a fraction, if I put it over 1, that's what it would look like. So -5 times 8 is a -40, and then 2 times 1 is 2, so that's going to be a -20. So there, when I distribute here, I'm going to be left with a -20r. And then my other is -5/2 times -6/1. So -5 times -6 gives me a +30. And then 2 times 1 is 2. So 30 divided by 2 is going to be 15. So then I'm going to add 15 over here. So then I'm going to bring down what's left, plus 2r, and then over here I have a +7. So again, when you're multiplying fractions, you don't have to multiply, or you don't have to find a common denominator. You just multiply the numerator across and the denominator across, and then simplify. Multiply numerator, denominator, and then simplify. So now we're going to combine our like terms. We have -20r and 2r, and then we have 7 and 15. So this is what we would combine. So 7 plus 15 is going to be 22. And then -20 plus 2 is going to be a -18r equals 32. And then we don't have variables on both sides, but we do have constants. So we're going to get our constants together. I'm going to subtract 22 from both sides. And now we have -18r equals 10. And then we're going to divide both sides by -18. And then 18 divided by -18 gives me 1, and I'm left with r equals. So in this case, since we don't have a calculator, so what we're just going to do is simplify that to its simplest fraction, which would be 5/9, -5/9. All right, and the last one you see here, to go to class, 5 times the difference of twice a number and 3 decreased by the sum of the number and 8 equals 13. So what you'll do is this last one, there's a challenge right here. So go ahead and try that and then get it written down. Good luck. Thanks for listening.